The Ring's financial success sparked the early 2000s cycle of American remakes of Asian horror movies. This success also paved the way for a sequel and possible franchise. Hideo Nakata, the director behind the original Japanese Ring film, was brought in to realize this continuation after the departure of Gore Verbinski. This gave birth to a strange creation, a film mostly forgotten in the decades after its release. This attempt to recapture the magic of the remake fizzled out. It was met with modest financial success, negative critical reception, and has earned itself a long-lasting reputation amongst horror fans as a poorly made cash grab. The Ring 2 is an intriguing mess of a film, and in today's video, we're going to look back at how it all went wrong. Join me and let's explore The Ring 2. Hideo Nakata was following in the footsteps of Takashi Shimizu, who utilized the Asian horror remake boom as a vehicle to move into Hollywood studio filmmaking. Shimizu worked alongside producer Sam Raimi on a remake of his own film, Ju-On the Grudge. That film was shot in Japan, while Nakata would have to leave the comfort of his native country and have a much more typical Hollywood studio filmmaking experience. Nakata was frustrated, bored, and unfulfilled by this experience, describing to Daniel Benson for HorrorDNA.com, Hollywood studios are subsidiary companies under huge corporations. They have to follow the rule of capitalism. The main goal is to make money. Caring for the quality of films became secondary. The decent film culture to respect filmmakers' creativity is now gone. The film's budget was much higher than he had ever worked with, featuring a much larger access to digital effects. Nakata found this style of filmmaking much less creatively fulfilling than his work in Japan, saying in an interview with Jason Gray, "In Hollywood, I felt like I was making a car rather than a film, an industrial product." This was an alienating feeling that only grew when he was brought on to direct a remake of the Hong Kong horror film The Eye, which he eventually withdrew from. After The Ring 2, Nakata left Hollywood, making one more English-language film, Chat Room, a UK-financed film, before returning to Japan. Shimizu went through a similar process, directing the American versions of The Grudge and The Grudge 2 before heading back home. These opportunities for Asian filmmakers soon dried up, as the Hollywood Asian horror remake cycle died out by the end of the decade. The Ring 2's modest financial results and lackluster reception from audiences and critics alike, along with no clear path forward, meant the series went dormant. In my opinion, the film's lackluster reception was due to several reasons that all stem from the core messiness of the film's execution. It features a nonsensical story that drops the best aspects of the original film in favor of a weird, boring, and empty approach to horror. Any positive aspect is overshadowed by the fact that it's infected with several critical problems. The first of these problems is the lack of tension, dropping the first film's 7-day deadline that made everything so tense, every moment matter, and enveloped its characters in such an overwhelmingly strong sense of doom. The unraveling of the mystery was brilliant, with each small piece of the puzzle bringing us further into the horror while setting up a masterful final twist. After the cold opening, the sequel drops the cursed tape and the 7-day deadline, replaced instead by a nonsensical possession plot. Without a set of rules or a hard deadline grounding us, the film slips in and out of surreal imagery and cheap jump scares, leading to narrative incoherence. This isn't the cool kind of dreamlike horror present in the likes of the work of David Lynch, but instead it's lazy, boring, and painfully unscary. There are never any answers to what's going on, and the characters all feel extremely hysterical from the start. We don't care what's happening or who it's happening to. Naomi Watts does a good job with the material, but her character makes baffling decisions and loses a lot of what made her interesting in the first film. She experiences no real arc in this film. Her character's been reduced to simply a mother. David Dorfman does an okay job as Aiden, who's still weird, but his expanded role does nothing to get me to care about him, and his possession acting is bland. Samara's rules and internal logic are completely broken, killing suspense and horror. She doesn't feel as intimidating in this film, and the scares featuring her are way less effective. Possession horror movies can be awesome, but this film drops any of the interesting ways to approach that material in favor of a weird mix of surrealism, standard American horror tropes, and bad CGI. This makes any tension or horror we may feel dissipate. Part of what makes The Ring so effective is that hard deadline of 7 days. Without it, without the tape, you lose what made that film so special. To simply replace that, the heart of the narrative, the engine for all the tension and horror, with a generic possession storyline is such a shame. We still get small moments that call back to the first film, but they lack the execution, the craftsmanship, or the context that made them so effective. So instead, we get moments that simply recycle aspects from the first film in the least interesting way, devoid of the overarching vision that made those disparate parts work so well together. The surreal vignettes of the tape haunting Rachel Keller throughout the first film make sense within the context of that narrative. In a film that drops the tape completely, they feel pointless and serve as reminders of a much better film. The investigation element is unnecessary, boring, and feels like a cheap imitation, with plot beats like the return to the Morgan farm, finding Samara's biological mother, and Rachel discussing killing Aiden serving as plot filler rather than crafting a captivating mystery. They couldn't figure out a single interesting way of forwarding this narrative, proving that the idea of focusing on these characters again was the wrong choice. These moments of repetition add too much extra weight and baggage to a narrative that is already bogged down enough. The film bored me so much that the runtime felt twice as long. The non-recycled bits of the film are so haphazardly stitched together, they don't have a strong feeling of cohesion or momentum. In a possession film, the deterioration of the possessed character is supposed to feel drastic, but that doesn't happen here. Dorfman only changes superficially, and Watts is constantly in this same register of panic throughout the entire runtime. We get no building of suspense or mystery. Instead, everything is thrown at the wall in hopes that it sticks. Nakata brings his obsession with water into this film, and this does create some cool visual moments, such as the bathtub scene, but it also feels like overkill at times, with so many visuals used being failed attempts at deep symbolism. This is tied to the second major problem with the film, the visual effects. The CGI deer scene is the perfect example of the visual effects looking so weird and distracting. The obviousness of the artifice is off-putting and not an effective way to sell the horror. That scene is more likely to make you laugh than scream. This one scene perfectly illustrates the overuse of CGI. The way that the digital effects were incorporated was a cheap way to try and pull off scares. Yes, the first film used digital effects, but they were incorporated much smarter, such as with the scene at the end where Samara has this glitchy digital sheen as if still playing on a videotape while she was in the real world. This was an effective moment that helped to build an otherworldly digital mystique around Samara's appearance and physical presence that enhanced the supernatural horror. In the sequel, Samara's appearances are more frequent and explicit, and the digital landscape Rachel enters at the end is both frustratingly illogical and less interesting than what we got in the original film. There are elements I like about this movie. Nakata and cinematographer Gabriel Beristain created some beautiful imagery. The landscapes of Oregon look great, and there are some great visuals sprinkled throughout, such as the recurring burning tree and water motifs. The acting is mostly fine, with Naomi Watts not phoning it in. If the film had been more sparing in its usage of CGI, if it had dropped the cliched and rehashed plot elements and leaned into being a visual spectacle with a weird storyline, I could have enjoyed it much more. I doubt Nakata's vision was able to be fully realized on his first Hollywood project, but at the same time, his Japanese sequel was also underwhelming. I think the story of The Ring makes it difficult to come up with a continuation, which is why the series has struggled both in Japan and in the US to find ways to carry on. This is a film series that feels like it should have more potential for growth, but filmmakers from all across the world have struggled to find a way to unlock its true potential. The series has instead become a cycle of successively less inspired cash grabs. The Ring 2 is better than Rings, but I can't imagine it will ever develop into a cult classic or get fully redeemed. This is a disappointing sequel that has some intriguing weird elements that bring me back for rewatches, but neither the theatrical nor unrated cut fully leaves me feeling satisfied. What do you think of this film? Are you a defender of The Ring 2? Do you find it completely unredeemable? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. That's all for this video. I'll see you next time.